Hello everyone, my name is Hilario, or Hil the Poet, as you may know me in social media. So just want to talk a little bit about this series. So this series is to bring together local poets and artists, sit down with them, have a little bit of a talk, get to know them in a more personalized way. Maybe you can relate to stuff that we speak, or maybe you just find some of these artists interesting. So today I have with me Harry Mellor.
Thank you for having me on, bro.
Thank you. How are you, Harry? How you been?
Very well, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Could you let the audience just know a little bit about you, if you could just give an introduction?
I'm Harry Mellor, 25, and Nottingham-based spoken word artist. Been writing and performing poetry now for about 6 years, and yeah, I've been performing all around Nottingham and sort of the Midlands area.
Yeah, good. So, have you always lived in Nottingham?
Yeah, always lived in
born and raised in that.
Yeah, I work in the hospital. I was born in that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Come down about 4 floors. That's it.
That's massive. Yeah. So, usually, what I like to do is start with, how did you get into poetry? How did you get introduced to it? Like, talk to me a little bit about your journey.
So it started from like a young age. I think I was about 7 or 8, and school did like a project of like it was poems all about nature and conservation and that kind of thing, and like the whole class submitted poems and it got like published in an anthology. So that was like my first experience of it, and I never did anything with poetry ever again for like 10 years. And then it was probably when I was about sort of 18, 19, just sort of coming to terms with being like a young adult, started to deal with like more mature emotions and realities, and then I just started writing poetry one day. It was really weird. I just sort of went home one day and just sort of picked up a pen and paper and just started writing, and then it was quite cathartic and enjoyed it, and then started doing it a little bit more, becoming more regular, and then I think I sort of shared it with a couple of friends, and then it was kind of more like, oh no, this is like something you should share with people rather than just something
to be for yourself.
For myself, yeah. So.
Yeah. So, like, did you have one of those households where everyone is like really creative, and it was kind of like a natural progression for you to do something creative? Or completely different?
The opposite. Yeah, like no one else in the family is creative. Obviously, they're creative in their ways, but no one's a creative per se.
In the sense of like poetry or music or anything like that.
So
it's kind of like my family is like that. Like I always felt like I was the odd person out, like obviously in my family, like one of my sisters, she's really into art and stuff like that, but in terms of like poetry and writing, like I felt like from a very young age I always knew I was gonna do something with writing, because I just genuinely just loved sitting down writing. And for me it started with things like writing stories for my younger siblings, and do you know what I mean? Because I was really into like anime and Dragon Ball and all of that stuff, and so I always wanted to write like really nice stories and stuff like that. And then I think for me it moved into poetry when I met my dad, and then my dad left. And for me at that age, it was like an explosion of emotions that I didn't know how to deal with.
And then that's how you started to process it.
And then the only way for me to process it was to write. So did you have any of those moments where you felt like, I need to express myself, like I'm going through something, and I need to express myself, and like my outlet is poetry?
So like quite similar to you actually, like even as a kid, like it wasn't writing poetry, but I always used to write stories, and mine was much more like I was into like fantasy and dragons and all those kind of things. So I was always just writing like little stories and things. And then like I said, I think it was sort of around 18, 19 when I just started to be sort of confronting like issues with mental health, and like just becoming more aware of the struggles that come with being an adult, and losing that innocence of a child. It was like there's a lot of emotions and a lot to process, and I kind of turned to that, like I say, initially in that sense of like, I've just got a lot going on here, let me just put it on a page. And then it just came out, and like just started doing it regularly, like almost journaling, and then the more you practice something, you generally get better. And like I say, it started to pick up, and I was like, you know, starting to look at myself and go, it's not half bad, to be fair. Like maybe there's something I enjoy in this, and then it became more hobby and doing it more regularly, and then started actively looking to like perform and things like that.
When did you realize that what you were writing was poetry? Because I know my moment, but I'm interested to know, when was your moment that you thought, okay, maybe I am writing poetry?
I think, actually, I actually do know. So it was like, I'd been like doing this thing of like writing, and I suppose I knew it was poetry anyway, like in the sense because it was like in the classical form of rhyming and, you know, scripted. But then I was watching, I don't know if you know that film Ill Manners by Bob. You know that scene with John Cooper Clarke where he does his poem in the pub. And then I was like, you know, like a lot of like, there's a lot to unpack in what he says, and then like I kind of went back and looked at some of the stuff I wrote, and I was like, this isn't just me talking about how I'm feeling, thinking. There's actually a lot in here that's observational to the outside world as well as to my internal world as well. So I think that was a point where I realised, oh, like I am kind of writing poetry, and obviously I love like John Cooper Clarke, like a great poet, and I was like, you know, kind of see like what I'm doing is similar in a sense.
Yeah, for me, I didn't even know about poetry. I didn't understand what poetry was. For me, it was, I made the transition because I already knew how to write. I already knew that I was good at doing that, but I started to want to challenge myself. And to kind of like, you know, let's say how I can express myself. I got into writing rap and hip hop, you know, writing bars. When I made the move from Portugal to England, started to write bars.
Were you writing in English or Portuguese?
English. I started writing anything like poetry or creative was always in English, but then like stories and stuff I would write in Portuguese. But yeah, I used to write 16 bars, 32 bars. Because I had a group of friends that were very musical and stuff like that. I never was like really confident to go on stage, but I would always be able to write
and just enjoy doing it.
Enjoy doing it. And I think one day, like I went to my English teacher and I bought a book of all my writings. I put all of them together, went to my English teacher and just gave it to her. She took it away. And then later on, she came to me and started talking to me about like poetry and forms and haiku and this and that. I'm like, what is this? What is this world? But that was kind of like my entrance into poetry as like a form, as like a thing where I started to understand. But for me, I didn't understand fully what poetry was until I joined a group here in Nottingham called the FIB Poets. And through the FIB Poets, they used to do workshops. That's when I started to challenge myself a lot, because that was the first time I would have started meeting people like myself. Because for me, writing was a solo thing. I only wrote it when I'm like, you know, I have things to get through my chest.
I need to get this out.
But that was the first time I'm sitting in a room writing with people that were kind of like me, and you know, that also had their own struggles and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really interesting to know like that point that you start to think, because for me, I think it happened much later than what normal people would have been. I think the whole time I was just enjoying challenging myself in the art of writing. I didn't understand poetry in a sense.
I think it was the same for me really, that like even like obviously in school you study poetry and things like that, and it's all like very regimented of this style of poetry, and there's all these, you do the thematic ones where you're looking at war poetry or things like that. So like when I first started writing, there was no like set style to it, as you know, my style was quite different. There was just what came out, and there was no set theme. It was just as I was feeling at the time. And then, like I said, it was a little bit of time when I've been writing for maybe like 6 months or so, and I was showing some of my friends bits, and they were like, oh, you should like go to some. So I started like looking up open mics, and I went to like a couple of open mics, and even the first couple I went to, because my style is quite different from like a classical sense of poetry, like I still felt a little bit like oh, it's quite different to me. And I think it wasn't until I met Chris. Me and Chris went to an open mic, just you know, bumped into each other. I think it was do you have Black Drop? I don't think it runs anymore, but it was a night that used to run a few years ago. And yeah, like we both kind of did it, and obviously there are like more similarities of mine and Chris's style, where like I was then like, oh, like this is someone who's doing poetry and it's like me. And then we started to get to know each other, and then we started like interacting with people like Jar down at CRS, and that was I think that was when my creative journey really sort of snowballed. I'd been doing the creative stuff, but that was when I really felt I was immersing myself in that world. So.
Just to kind of lead from this conversation, when was your first sort of open mic, or when was the first moment you put yourself on stage, and what was the transition for that? Because was it like a push, or was it something that you decided within yourself, no, I'm gonna do it? Because for me, it was like literally someone put my name in a hat
and pulled it out,
and then my name was called, and then I felt peer pressure to go on stage. That was my first experience. How was yours?
It was maybe a bit like, I was looking at, like, I'd kind of decided in myself, I'm like, I want to do an open mic now, you know, like I like this stuff I'm doing, I've been practicing it in my room and things like that. And one of my mates, Omar, was really like, yo, we need to go to one. And I'd been saying, oh yeah, we'll go to one. And that thing was saying, yeah, we'll go to one. And then just not doing it. And then one time he was like, right, there's one tonight, let's get in the car, let's go. And it was, I can't remember the name, if it was Crosswords. And it was at the Cock and Hoop pub. And it was downstairs. So that was the first time I went on stage, and I remember I had like 2 poems. So like sat myself up the open mic, and they were going through the list. So the whole time I was sat there, my heart's just like going like this. And then I went up and I did like my first poem, and I just read it super fast. It was like, like no one understood a word of it. And then like the people still like received it well. And then like I took a breath and I did my second one, and I was like, right, I'll actually just do this poem as I've been doing it rather than rushing it. And I did it and like got like that euphoric feeling from it, and was gassed. And then from there I just started trying to find as many open mics as I could. And then I think the first platform that really pushed and hyped me was Truth, which is run by Plentiful Poet, and that was
I know her. It
was about 4 or 5 years ago, and she like, I think she saw me at an open mic in Derby, and she was like, no, like I love your stuff, like I'm doing this workshop, I'm doing these open mics, like, I want you to come. Started doing it, and from there she just like, it was both me and Chris, she was showing us both like a lot of love and like really pushing us. So that was when I was really, I would say, getting comfortable on stage and enjoying being on stage, rather than saying I need to be on the stage. Do you know what I mean? So
I used to hate being on stage. Like literally, I couldn't get out of there as fast as I could. Literally. And it's funny, like I'm listening to your story, and I'm thinking like, wow, I really used to be like that. Like literally, I would go, but I'm in my head, I'm just thinking, do it as quick as possible. Just get your thing out and leave. And now you can't get me out of the stage. Like, I just want to stay there. I just want to play with the crowd.
Any opportunity.
Any opportunity I get to be on stage, I want to be on there. Like it's like you said, it's so euphoric, and you know, you feel like it gives you a bit of freedom being on stage. I feel that sometimes whereas before it was like you know, but for me it was a big journey for me to be comfortable on stage. Like I had to go and do, like, I kind of did not acting, but I did acting workshops to kind of prepare me to be. I did it with Bridie. I don't know if you know Bridie. She had run some workshops, and because she was doing her solo show, her first solo show. And so she was doing workshops, and I went to do those, and those workshops helped me a lot. Like being, you know, kind of like having to play a different character and stuff like that. It just helped me to really start loving the stage. I wouldn't even say it helped. It's almost kind of, it helped me create a persona that is comfortable being on stage.
I do that. I mean? I do that before, because like I hear with the acting, it's like it's still performance, whether it's poetry or whatever. Like you're still performing. But like I have this thing of like, before I go on now, like even though I'm like listening and watching other people, I'm like imagining myself there, knowing that that's like when I'm there, that's my space. Because like, it's easy to, when you go up there, to be in your head of everyone's looking at me and like, what are they thinking? But when you're watching someone, you're just enjoying what they're doing. So I have to like be conscious for myself that these people are just enjoying what you're presenting. So if you just go up, present, they're going to take from it what you give. And it is like that persona thing of, you almost have to delude yourself into it, don't you?
Yeah, you do,
But like, I've got to a point where I'm comfortable. Like, I performed last night, and it was quite weird. I had like my first sort of like out of body experience performing. Like, I was performing, and then like I was just doing it, and then like halfway through I felt like I just stepped out and I was watching myself do it, and I was I'm not even conscious that I'm doing it. It's just, so it's a long journey though. That's been like 5 years.
It is, and I think like this is what I say to like obviously people starting out, like just do it. Do you know what I mean? Get out there, do it. No, it's not going to be perfect the first one, it's not going to be perfect the second time, it's not going to be perfect the third time, fourth, fifth, sixth, but you know that point is going to come where it's just going to click.
And like this, like the thing as well, we're always so much more like critical of ourselves. So like any little thing that you notice when you're performing, I can guarantee 95% of the people there haven't even noticed. Like you might have said, oh, I didn't say that bit right, or that was too quick, or whatever. And it's like most people probably, they just didn't notice it. And like they're the mistakes you've got to make, I think, because then like you learn so much, even though you might not feel like the greatest about your performance. You're then so much more conscious of what you need to do next time. So
I think I became comfortable with my mistakes on stage. And I think that's what made the difference. It's not that I became bad on stage. Well, I have, but I think I consciously make the decision to say to myself that if I make a mistake, it's okay. Because these people, genuinely, the people that come and watch poetry, they're so nice.
Very receptive.
If you make a mistake or not, like they're not bothered about that. Do you know what I mean? They're bothered about the whole experience of what you're delivering.
I feel like with the poetry as well, like when people are watching, they're not just there to take and witness for themselves, they're also there to like participate with the artist. So they want the artist to get the most out of their performance as well. So they're not gonna, like you said, they're not gonna be critical of a mistake, because they want you to enjoy yourself performing as much as they want to enjoy you performing as well.
That's true. Cool. So we're gonna lead to. We kind of already been touching on these points, but like, I want to ask you, what were your challenges in your way? What would you say were the defined challenges, and how did you overcome them?
What with regard to like performing and like?
Yeah, just your performing and your progression in poetry to where you are now. What were the main challenges, and how do you feel like?
And I think like a big one that's always, like it'll always be there because it's like just a natural human instinct, but it's that like self-critical of like, oh, that's not good enough, or like people aren't going to enjoy that, or that kind of thing. But like you say, you people do enjoy it. People enjoy just hearing different perspectives. So it's being comfortable with presenting yourself as you are. Another one was, again, like sort of what you touched on, what you're saying, becoming comfortable with the mistakes you make on stage. That was like another big thing of like, it doesn't need to be this crystal clean performance anyway. Like it's human, it's natural. Like people might enjoy it more if there's a little slip up and you can make a laugh out of it or something like that. I would say the biggest like one for me was like lockdown. Like, because like I said, once I'd sort of got into that poetic journey for a couple of years, and then lockdown came, and I didn't realise how much my writing was inspired by other people. And that's not necessarily that like someone does something or says something and then I write about that. It's more just being around people, like just like the natural motions of life would like inspire me to write. And like, you know, and I think I was like, during lockdown, the first few months I was still writing away like every day, but then I started to notice that it got to a point where I was like, I'm just writing the same stuff now because there's nothing going on. So I'm just like, so then I started, that fell a little bit out of love with writing and sort of like didn't write for a while. And then sort of lockdown started passing and started like getting back into the swing of things. And that was just into like the swing of life, and I still like didn't pick up the pen for a while. And then it was probably didn't write for like well over a year. Just like didn't write, didn't perform, do nothing. And then just like picked up the pen again and started trying to perform, started trying to write, and then get into performing, and like I was rusty. I didn't want to do it. I was like, no, I've left it too long, I've lost it. Like I had my time there, that was cool. And then it took me probably like another good year or so or more of like just occasionally trying to write and find that creative spark again. And then it's sort of like last year it just sort of like started writing again, and I sort of wrote this one poem, and then it was just like the floodgates open, like everything started coming back. So Yeah, I'd say that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of people found lockdown challenging. For me, it was the opposite. I found myself during lockdown. I think because I'm the type of person that is always out about, I'm never stopped.
Yeah.
I'm always doing something. I'm always in a rush. I think stopping and made me get inside myself, realize who I actually am, what I want to achieve, what I want to do. In terms of like but in terms of being an artist, it helped me because there were less I think I'm a better writer when I have less distractions around. I'm easily distracted. Like literally anything can distract me and then I can't write anymore, like literally. So I think lockdown gave me the time to be able to actually sit within myself and almost be like that kid again in Portugal by myself, hurt because my dad was gone and I was just in my room in the dark, with a lamp, writing how I felt. That's kind of like how lockdown was for me. Like I had a lot of time to just be within myself and be able to write. But yeah, so just going off that, I want to kind of talk to you about your writing style and your writing process, because like actually I realized this recently about myself. So me and Chris, I decided to collaborate with Chris Watson, as by the way, just so we don't get the confused. I decided to collaborate with Chris Watson to do a poem for the Saltbox event we had yesterday. I realized that I can't sit down and kind of like push the thing to come. I usually just wait for the inspiration to come, and it can happen. It can be at 3 a.m. in the morning. I wake up and then I feel like writing. But then I started to realize, why is that? The reason why that is again, I'm easily distracted. In my house, I have Xbox, I have computer, I have my phone, I have my dog. And I realized that, so this past 2 years, I've been going a lot to Manchester, I've been traveling a lot. And I'm realizing that I'm writing a lot in trains. A lot of my new poetry is being written whilst I'm on the train. And I realized the reason why I can write on the train is because there's no distractions.
There's nothing else there.
There's nothing else there. So I almost have to put myself in a vacuum. I like, it is nice to see that difference, because you were saying earlier, you're the type of writer that you kind of need people around, not necessarily like to feed things off, but you need to feel that environments for you to kind of get your gears going. Whereas for me, I feel it's like the opposite, where I kind of need to be in a vacuum, where I'm like locked off.
You and remind it's just me of, there's an author, Neil Gaiman, and he talks about like when he writes, he has like a little shed at the bottom of his garden. And all he can do in that shed is write. And what he means by that is like, he's not allowed to pick up the phone, he's not allowed to read a newspaper, he can just look out the window. And he says, but after 5 minutes of just staring out the window, writing becomes the most attractive thing he can do. So he just ends up writing all the time.
You know what, that's a good idea. I might have to clear out my shed still. I might need to clear my shed. That's a good idea. But yeah, like, talk to me about your writing process. How does that come to you? Is there like a spark, or do you go through a process if you want to write new material?
It's like there's like two ways to it. Like one, sort of touching on what you're saying, with like I like everything going on around me. And what you're saying, that during lockdown when you didn't have that around you, you found it easier to write. I like giving myself the time to write, because I create that, like, because it's peaceful. You know what I mean? It's creating that peace of just going, it's been a hectic day, I'm just going to sit down for half an hour and write. I might not write anything good, or I might not write anything that I end up using, but it's just creating that space for me. But I find like mine tend to come from very weird sparks of like, I'll just be like sat at work on my lunch thinking about things, and I'll just think like a certain thought comes to mind, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting like like an interesting point to start writing about, or I might even get a specific line that comes in, but then it's once I've got like a line or a topic, I can sit and I can just write.
Just flow. Yeah.
Like I remember once, like I get it a lot if I'm hungover.
Yeah.
I go, like some of my best stuff comes when I'm hungover,
Wow.
feeling sorry for myself. And once I woke up hungover, and then like I saw like a video, and I was just like scrolling my phone, saw this video on Insta. It was like Brian Cox talking about like humans are essentially just made up of dead stars.
Yeah.
And then that just a line came to me of like the death of a star is what gave me frame and structure.
Yeah.
Half an hour I had like a full poem.
Yeah.
Like it just weird. So then some of them need more work, but like generally like I can get a full like 2-3 minute poem out in like a sitting, like one sitting. So that kind of happens. I tend to find my best stuff comes from that. Like if I have like a thought or like something just sparked like a certain line, or obviously mine's like wordplay as well. Sometimes I like someone will say something like a word, and then I could just hear it like used in a different way. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting bit of wordplay. Write it down and then go back to it. But then like I try and regularly give myself a bit of time every day or every couple of days, obviously, because like schedules can get busy. But like give myself the time to write, even if I'm not necessarily going to like do anything with it, just like, you know, literally like a free write. So
So you touch on wordplay. It's because I would say one of your defining characteristics of your poetry is the wordplay.
Yeah.
Like I think is the way that you put things together, for me, is what like makes me click my fingers until they bleed whenever you do a poem. Like, is that something that you consciously think about, or is that something that comes, or maybe both?
I'd say it's something I consciously think of, like, because I think as well, like with wordplay, you can often get, like if you can get a really clever bit of wordplay in, it can often be quite thought-provoking, which is like useful for yourself, like it makes you think about things, but also for like an audience to give them something to think about. So like generally, like that's why I say like a lot of the time I have like a note on my phone of just like loads of words that can be used as wordplay or like messed around, and then like sometimes I'll be writing a poem and I'll be like, oh wait, that one will fit here, or sometimes it'll just come naturally. But it's kind of hard with them because they're so contextual to the poem and the rhyme scheme. But it is something I enjoy doing. I enjoy thinking, how can I use one word to mean multiple different things, or like play on a certain idea. So yeah, I'd say that's like one of the most conscious elements of my writing, whereas like the rhyming just comes very naturally.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I would definitely say that the rhyming, but I like that. I like that the rhyming isn't forced, because I feel like some writers sometimes can force a rhyme too much.
Yeah.
I used to be like that because I used to be. I was used to writing bars and always thinking at the end of the line what's going to rhyme with the other end of the line. But then I went for a period where I decided I'm going to challenge myself. I don't want to rhyme anymore. I want to focus more on the content. And now I feel like I'm recreating a new style where it kind of blends both together, where is the emotional impact of what I'm trying to deliver, but also there is hints of rhyming element within there. So then my personality gets to come out more. So do you feel like your writing or your poetry reflects you as a person? Very well.
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree with that.
Like, so it's a bit like I sort of touched on it earlier, is that a lot of it like tends to be like introspective, looking at myself, but then also like presenting it in a way where someone can listen to something I've said and use it to reflect on themselves and the things that they're experiencing. Yeah, exactly. Because I kind of like, I do a lot of like thinking as well, like critical thinking, because I did a degree in history and politics. So like I did a lot of reading on like deep topics, and like so like always been a deep thinker per se. Do you know what I mean? So like that's why the content of the poems I think that comes tend to be like more on the deep side. One of my favourite kind of poetry is like comedy poetry. Like I love it. Could I ever write that?
Yeah, you know what? I tried, but it's very difficult to be poetic and funny at the same time.
It's difficult to be funny. I don't know how people write comedy. Like I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's incredible. But there's a poet that That's all he does.
Yeah.
I can't remember what his name is. I've seen it in an open mic.
Is it the guy from Leicester?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
It's from Leicester. I can't remember his name as well.
I know, as soon as you said that, I know you're on about because he has me howling every time.
Literally. But it's funny how he puts his stuff together.
Yeah.
To be like that, because I write from chaos.
Yeah.
I write from pain.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to switch it a little bit to write my poetry more about social issues and but I write from rage and anger and pain and sadness and so whenever I tend to say whenever life is too good for me,
the poetry stuff.
Poetry is just I need something to happen.
Yeah, I think I've got to that point where I've got enough peace in my life where I can write obviously some of the ones I've performed recently, they tend to be a bit more positive and light-hearted and there's good things to talk about in it. But generally, I agree, my stuff it's not necessarily pain, but it's just stuff that I need to process. It's not like you enjoy a positive emotion, whereas negative emotion you have to deal with and process. Yeah. And generally, it seems like we deal with it by writing about it. Yeah. So
I once challenged myself to write a positive poem. I struggled. Yeah. I really struggled. I was like, how do people do this? Yeah. How does a positive poem even look like?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Because I'd say a large percentage of poetry is people just having a moan about the stuff they're going through. So
exactly. So. But it would be interesting.
I like to think that the meaning of words are infinitely active. I mean, just contemplate the original meaning of Brandon. You'll soon reconsider the expensive clothes you're trapped in, all those labels and claspings puncturing, grasping the root of your being in a commercialised caption. See, there's no attraction in glorified garments, tainted by a hot room in darkness, no options to harness. The choice doesn't seem present on the high street's varnish, whereas me, I'm calcified by a condensed cackle of choice in my cranium cavity. Forced to grapple responsibility, but 7 habits come with intensified gravity. Rewarded only by pristine perceptions glazed with an ethereal clarity. But choice can't always be described so happily. So you see me, I'm melancholy come rain or shine. And I've noticed loneliness is a tax you pay for a certain frame of mind. So in this fervent game of life, it's an earnest game of time. Reducing heinous crimes is my prudent way to grind. And internet connections are reducing frames of time. No more than a second to improve your state of mind before a finger skates on by. So my reflection and I might not look like fighters. But I wholeheartedly promise I've only been touched by Midas. Lived a lot of wrong, so I surround myself with writers. It's the perception and the pain that really come to guide us. See, division just delights us, shows some love and they despise us. Nasty brute is short, it was written, where's the kindness? Not in front or just behind us, in the present it might find us if we're present without blindness, with a renewed poetic license. I sense I'm needing some insurance. Or maybe just assurance that this ain't another chorus with the fanfare set to bore us. Skip the ball without the Taurus. Always question what they taught us. I see questions as important because the answers feel so dormant. Ignore behaviour, see the causes. Because I've got too many friends who fear what's morganatic. Tell them to learn some respect before your organs flaccid. Find the cause of all your panic and become a meditative addict. Find a route and then just track it amongst the stars. You might just map it, then you can walk a muddy path and still trust you've got a clean soul. See, it's better to sit amongst the freak show than follow sheep and seek hope. And trust me, after all this time, a lot of things have been known. So I tend to view the world as a rainbow because a lot of colours been shown.
Right, yes. So what's next for you from this point? What is coming up?
I think progressing into music more, working with the guys from Vibe City, and trying to get a few songs together. And I've got friends who are singers. Yeah. I've always like wanted to work with like a female vocalist as well, because I think it complements my style and the way I deliver. So doing a lot of that, really trying to perform a lot more poetry as well, like trying to, outside of Nottingham, as much as I love performing in Nottingham because it's where I'm from, wanted to perform in other places. Like there's so much going on in London, possibly looking to like come and get up to Edinburgh Fringe, something like that. So they're really the next steps, and then I think I'm going to have to bite the bullet and start with my socials a bit more. Because that's where I am.
Yeah, I know you don't really like your socials that much.
I think I'm going to have to start, I want to start doing some like TikToks, you know, even just like some of my poems, like cuts from them, just like in a simple scene. So things like that, really sort of trying to promote myself in that way is sort of the next step for me, and a natural progression with that. Yeah.
So obviously you're going to do some performances.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your songs, your poems, and sort of what they mean and stuff like that.
We're all like very different. Like I said, and I think like from where it started even to now, like it's always cathartic. It's always just getting stuff out. It always feels better once it's out on the paper and you can look at it and rationalize it. So like a lot of them, like I said, they just come from like weird moments, like
snapshots.
Like one of the ones that came to me was like someone said something about branding, and I was like, oh, like branding, like clothing branding. I was like, oh, but you know, like a couple hundred years ago, you used to brand cattle and like people and things like that. And I was like the meaning of words are like always active. It's always changing, always developing. And that gave me a spark for that line, and then that goes into a poem. And sort of as we were saying earlier, like most of poetry is people complaining. It's people moaning about the stuff they're dealing with. So like now I'm trying to like look at, like not force myself to, but like enjoying the positive things in my life, because I've got a positive like environment around me. So it's like enjoying them and kind of put them in a poem. And that's been challenging, but enjoying. Like I've been enjoying it a lot because it's just a new way of writing. Like rather than ranting, I'm like.
Do you think that that's important for us as poets to be in an environment where, not just in terms of who's supporting us, but people around us that creates that environment that makes it so we can flourish in the craft that we are doing? Because I think that's I don't know about you, but I think that has been a key change for myself. Would you say it was as well for you?
I think that applies to anyone, not even just people doing poetry. Like having the right people around you to do what you want to do is essential. But like for me, definitely, like I had points that even when with the lockdown thing, I didn't have like the best people around me. So like I didn't want to write, I didn't want to, whereas like the people around me now are like always asking about it, and that kind of, as much as I want to do it myself, then like you've got that external thing of people being like interested and invested in it, and you're like, you want to do some good stuff so they can enjoy it as well, because they're like that invested in what you're doing. So I think it's like a massive thing, but I think like the big thing is creating that positive environment for yourself anyway. Like, can you, like, goes back to like even stuff you like I was reading during my degree of like Marcus Aurelius, like build the citadel inside you. Like if you can build that place where you can be comfortable, then it allows you to flourish and do the things you want to do. So I think it's like a huge thing to like be comfortable, like being comfortable in yourself. I think like it's like being comfortable on your own, and like I say, when I'm comfortable on my own, I tend to pick up a pen and start writing. So
if you were starting out this whole thing again, what would you do and what you wouldn't do?
What I would do is, as much as I can, just go out there, like go to shows, even if you're not going to perform, go watch other people, pick up tips, because that's something I didn't do straight away. Like I would go and watch, and I'd be sat there thinking about my performance because I'm like nervous. But then you can watch other people and you can see the way that they are on stage, and it can give you, think, oh, that's useful actually, that settled the crowd down, or that made them look more at ease. So I think it's going to things, not even just to perform for yourself, but like getting tips from other performers with your networking, and also just performing as much as you can, because it's the practice. And like another thing I think is huge for like people who are writers is read a lot. Like, because I think that's where a lot of like my inspiration with words comes from, is because I read all the time. Like I just love reading, so like the words are all there. So if you want to be like an avid writer, you've got to be reading. I think, you know, it's not to say you need to go home and read a book every night, but like the more you read, the more comfortable you be with writing. So here's what I would do. What I wouldn't do would be putting it aside. Like if it's something that gives you passion, don't discredit it.
Yeah.
Even if you do it for 2 minutes a day, 5 minutes a week, whatever it is, if you love performing and you're thinking about doing it, thinking about getting into it, don't let a bad performance or like influences around you stop you doing it. Even if you're doing it in a smaller capacity, just keep doing it. Don't let it die, because you'll get more from it.
Yeah. No, that's big tips. What was the last book you read?
It's a Stephen King book. I'm reading one at the minute, but I've read another one. It was Misery.
Okay.
I don't know. They did a film of it in like the 90s as well. But yeah, great book. It's like it's just set up 2 people in one room like this, and the whole book is just you're on edge. So that's the last book I read. So now I kind of want to talk a little bit. Obviously, you perform for us at Volume 2, and then the award show as well. And we presented you with an award as well for. Caught me off guard.
I know, man. That's exactly what we wanted to do. So, but well deserved. By the way, it wasn't like a light choice. We had a lot of amazing performances come, but I think it was just a unanimous decision by the group that you would have received that award. So, but just talk to me about your experience in FluentinBoth, what you know about it, and like how important you think like the work that we do is for the community. Like
it's massive. So like I think first I got about it, like I've known obviously Chris Watson, will be specific. I've known Chris years. I performed at like an event he held like probably like 4 years ago before lockdown, and then I think it was just like a random night out. Like he just walked past me. He was like, "Yo, like you studying your poetry?" I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Oh, I'd got an event running, come to it." And he like messaged me, started like sorting it out, and then he was like, yeah, so you've got like a slot. I'm like, do you not need to hear anything from me or like? And he was like, no, just come along. So like for me that was like nice, because it was like getting shown that love straight away. And obviously when I came to that Volume 2, like the vibe, the setting, like I was just like loving that room. It's like as a performer, that's what you want. You just want that comfortability. And that came naturally. And again, like at the award show, like it was a sick event. Like everyone in there was just on like positive energy. Everyone just appreciating each other, the crowd appreciating each other, appreciating the performers appreciating the crowd. Like I know, like Josh said that as well when he received his, was like appreciating the crowd and things. And even like you guys appreciating the artists, like giving those awards and that kind of thing. Like it's a very like nice thing, and I've not seen that done before. So it was like humbling, but very nice. And like I think just with regards to like the community, like it's a huge thing to give people the space to do poetry. Like it's a huge thing. There could never be enough of that. But what I like about this is obviously there's also like with you there's like that focus on the other languages, and like it's the first time I've ever listened to poetry in other languages, because generally if you go to other open mics it's about doing poetry, and there's no rule to say you can't do a poem in another language, but generally people won't, whereas you've created that setting of like we welcome and actually encourage people to do the poem in like other languages. So I think I really enjoyed that aspect, because that's probably opened doors to a lot of poets who maybe wouldn't perform otherwise. That's
literally, you hit the hammer right in the nail. I think that's pretty much our kind of mission, is to just empower those people that wouldn't necessarily, because I've been one of those people. It took me a long time for me to be able to do my poetry in my own language. It's something that I wouldn't even consider some years ago. But it's about pulling those people, and like we had Ariana, and she did a poem in Portuguese, and so those are like moments of pride for us. But also for me, it's like poets like yourself, local poets like yourself, pushing the agenda and coming to our shows, always ready. Like it's just the way the whole community has been to us taking what we are trying to do. I think everyone kind of understand what it is that we're trying to push, and how we're trying to help other people. So you saying that is really, it's really good. And you know, the award show, it wasn't about FluentinBoth. It wasn't about the stuff that we do. It's just about giving back, creating, you know, a nice environment, nice energy, and giving back to the community, the artists, everyone that kind of has supported us and, you know, has kind of taken in our message and said, you know, like, we with you guys, like, you know, we want to see you grow. So that's kind of what it was. And, you know, actually Chris is the one that came to me and said, oh yeah, we need to have Harry Mellor. I was like, Harry who? Like, you know, I never heard about you before. And he said, no, listen, this guy is just sick. I was like, all right, I mean, well, you know, we're gonna make the first time when you did your the first poem you did, I looked at Chris like that and I just shook my head like, yeah, man, you're right. He's sick, man. Appreciate it. And you know, I've been a fan of yours ever since then. Like, and you know, any opportunity we have to have you on a platform, we'll always will. Like, you're part of our community, and this is the misconception some people have about what we're trying to do sometimes, is that we're all about language. Yes, we are about language, but we're about also showing it's two ways, right? So it's about people like yourself that never heard a poem in another language, but it's also about people from other cultures that have never interacted in those kind of spaces. Also meeting a Harry Mellor, you know, meeting a Davina. And so that is really important to us. It's not just about, oh, you can only speak in another language or anything like that. It's about creating a community where it's open for everyone and people feel safe and to be whatever they are, you know, whether you want to perform in English, whether you are just there to watch someone perform in a different language, you know, it's open to everyone. So
it comes through. It really does come through. I'm
really glad that that's kind of the message that you kind of took, you know. So so do you speak well, I won't ask the question whether you speak any other languages, but do you know any words in another language, and which one is that?
I speak a bit of Amharic. So
you actually speak
a little bit, because I had, where I was living before, my neighbour in the flat below was a refugee from Ethiopia. So like his English is like semi-broken. So like speaking to him, it'd be easier to like try and speak a little bit of Amharic with him, and like obviously like then his friends would come around and then like you sort of pick up bits and bobs, but then they're just, you were kind of like immersing there, and so you had to kind of like pick up but then like they just start talking too quickly. I'm like, you've lost me. Like it's like, I wouldn't say I can speak, like it's broken, but I can understand bits.
You can understand it's more or less like my Italian. Like I can be in a room with Italians and understand what they're saying, but don't ask me to speak to them. Like I can follow where the conversation's going, but I can't necessarily jump in the conversation. So I hear that. And so what's the word that you want to present to us?
I'd probably say Wandum Alam. It means brothers round your back. So it's something they always used to say to each other.
Good word. Do you have any sort of questions for us? Anything that you're curious about that you want to ask us?
What's the plan for FluentinBoth now? Because it's like it's been growing steadily.
Good question. So FluentinBoth has grown faster than I kind of thought it was going to grow. I feel we establish ourselves within the community. People know who we are, stuff like that. I think at the moment now is to just try to get stable forms of revenue, so then we can go on to do other things. So we can put ourselves in a place where we can do bigger shows, bigger venues. We can pull artists from other countries to come over to the UK to perform. I think that's where I want it to go and kind of become a window or a sort of place where external people from other countries touch base, and then local artists that we have here can also interact with artists from other places. I think create that hub and create kind of just, you know, the same energy and the same environment that we create on the shows, but have more interactions with other people from outside of the UK.
Poets.
Yeah, international poets, musicians, and I think people collaborating as well. You know, if we can get you or Harry Mellor to collaborate with someone from Spain or France, you know, I think we're achieving something. You know, we're breaking, because this is what we want to do. We want to break those boundaries of language and flags and all of that, because under the sun we are all one, right? And that's kind of like where we're trying to go next, is be a step forward into the goal that we have, which is to unite everyone.
So then, you kind of touched on it already, but I was asking, when you started it, did you have an end goal in mind, or did you just start it with the intention of giving that space to like poets with other languages, like more of a space to share?
If I'm honest with you, when I started it, I had no goal in mind. I just wanted a place where I could do poetry in my language, and other people can do too, and we can kind of relate to each other with being multicultural. But then, and I also wanted to bring my community. I wanted to introduce my community to the world that I knew. I was already into the creative scene, because I've been doing poetry with the Mouthy Poets for a long time, so I already knew. But a lot of people from my community didn't know even that we had a creative community in Nottingham. And so I wanted to kind of bring them through and like kind of show, oh, hey, you know, this is what we do, and we put on events and stuff like that, and you can come in and also just create a space where I can be free to, because I've been to many open mics, but I never felt like I could be who I really am, or be the Portuguese version of myself, because I almost feel like, depending on the language, it's kind of like a different identity in a way. And so I just wanted to create a space for myself initially, but then obviously bringing Chris, Elias, Anna, I start to realize that there's more people like me that also need a space, and there's a lot of English people out there that don't know that we have these communities around that also need a space where they can be, these communities can be pushed to them, and they can realize, oh, so we do have a Portuguese, Italian, Spanish community, Ethiopian, you know, Nigerian community here in Nottingham too, because these communities tend to be hidden, tend to stay within themselves, and so it's just about bringing them together. I think it evolved into that, and now I think with the work I do with the IG Live, we are sort of growing a little bit, expanding globally. I think for social media, we are getting seen in different places like South America, Africa, Australia, America, and stuff like that. And I think Danny gave me the idea that it's much bigger than me now. You know, so now I'm conscious that I have to create a space not just for myself,
but for people that need that space.
People that need that space as well. But good question.
Thank you. No worries.
But I mean, you know, I think this is pretty much the interview. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for
having this time as well, and you know, just being very honest and forefront with your experiences. If you could just tell the camera, like, I know you're not big on social media, but like, just tell your social media handles and where they can find you, and where you kind of like gonna go next, and where they can see you.
So the best place to reach me would be on Instagram. It's Harry Mellor 98. Then like I said, I'm going to be branching out into like TikTok and other social medias, but it'll all come through that. So Instagram will be the place to find me.
Harry, thank you very much, bro.
Thank you, bro.
Good to have you. Cheers.
Sometimes I have to sit and question, like, is it really a testify? I have to sit around and testify about every single testing time I've come across in this test called life. See, we're all stressed by life, and the tests we find might digress in time, but we were sent here to learn. A student of yesterday revising tomorrow, but accepting I have got the greatest present. Any conscious moment, blessing. So if I'm crying, am I stressing, or am I really just not getting all the answers life's presenting? And some say I might go soft. But I make PowerPoints when I excel with words because I'm that kind of software. I take a hard drive to package all these megabytes I'm getting. You see, I'm a soldier just not shelling because it's the peace that's now my weapon. I'm a sun that's never setting. Examples I'm not letting rule my life because this progression is obsession, not profession. I'm just living what I'm telling. So forgive the pace I'm setting. Just need to slow it down a second. Yeah. I know there's a version of me inside the head of every person that I've met, but I completely refuse to succumb to all this stress of whether I can fit the image that they will project, because I know that what I portray paints your portrait in a depth, something poor gaze can't collect. And all this taught hate without the foreplay and the poor ways we connect are causing me to force spades into digging something less. So now I'm caught between this swordplay with these poor frames claiming best, but really, who needs gourmet if there ain't formates you can text? Draw you out the cord spray from your poor brain on your chest, cause this city's got my stomach in knots. So I learned it's key to breathe and open up the locks inside this chest.